Thank you, Shireen, for that introduction, and a very good morning to all the distinguished delegates of this conference, Scaling Sustainable Finance in ASEAN. Firstly, I'd like to give a very warm thank you to the Global Ethical Finance Initiative, or GEFI, as well as the ASEAN or Asian Institute of Chartered Bankers, AICB, for inviting myself today to address all of you with some brief words regarding the topic at hand, scaling sustainable finance in ASEAN. Let me start off with Malaysia, my beloved home country, of course. Malaysia has taken some firm strides of late to really advance sustainable finance. In late 2022, our Securities Commission had issued a principles-based sustainable finance and responsible investment taxonomy for all capital market participants. It is about 45 pages long, outlining in some detail the environmental, the social, and sustainable components for sustainable financing. Then in late 2023 and also in early 2024, the Joint Committee on Climate Change, or JC3 as we call it here, and JC3 is essentially a joint collaborative committee between all key financial regulators, as well as banks, insurance companies, financial institutions in Malaysia. And JC3 had launched more initiatives and priorities to support a just and orderly transition of the economy, and of course, with sustainable financing right there front and center to do just that. In a recent speech, the governor of Bank Negara, our central bank, expects half of all new bank financing by 2026 to be aligned with our green climate policies. And on that note of policies, Malaysia has launched an ambitious energy transition roadmap, or as we call it here, NETR, to be net zero by 2050, and we do so by substantially increasing our renewable energy mix from 40% to 70% by that same date, 2050. Now, that increase from 40 to 70% entails an 11-fold increase in renewable energy capacity. And included in that policy roadmap as well is the reversal of a renewable energy export ban that Malaysia once had to all our ASEAN neighbors. But now instead, we are actively embracing and pursuing a policy of renewable energy exports to our neighbors. In that regard, I'm happy to report to all of you that Malaysia has just launched a renewable energy exchange mechanism, or ENERGEM in short, or that's the acronym, to enable renewable energy exports to Singapore. These new progressive policies would certainly accelerate sustainable finance projects, not only in Malaysia, but also across our ASEAN neighbors, as it takes all these parties as we embrace an approach of prosper thy neighbor. And as the saying goes, when you prosper thy neighbor, you prosper thyself. You have heard quite a number of key positive developments in both financial and sustainable policies, but also in energy transition policies. But what are still the key and major challenges ahead for sustainable finance in ASEAN? One of such challenges, in my humble opinion, not only in Malaysia but also across ASEAN, is basically the need for inclusive and affordable energy or electricity for the citizens of ASEAN. For Malaysia and quite a few of ASEAN neighbors, to do just that would mean to rely on cheap fuel resources. And to achieve that goal, Malaysia at least has relied quite heavily on coal. Indonesia is in a very similar position, as Indonesia itself is a coal producer. For Malaysia, our predominant fuel mix is coal at about 58%, followed by natural gas at 35%. So our current energy mix is over 93% fossil fuel based. Now, that in turn would mean that there's tremendous scope 2 and scope 3 emissions across the nation that's just very, very hard to avoid, but that would encompass almost every economic activity within Malaysia, and the same position is for some of our ASEAN countries. There is also the political challenge, of course, and that is that vast populations of ASEAN countries, who are, of course, some are quite impoverished relative to other more advanced nations, our populations basically are not happy with the possible increases or substantial increases in energy tariff brought about by the ESG demands of the what I call the RE100 group. The RE100 group are a set of highly capitalized, sometimes trillion-dollar market caps, multinational global companies with ambitions of energy intensive data centers that they want to set up here within ASEAN, and they all want it to be green. But the infrastructure required to enable this is basically now going to be in the trillions across ASEAN. And because of these demands, who pays for it? And that is a major political challenge as well that we all need to face to address the energy transition economy. Now, how do we go about, at least trying to resolve these issues? So, first and foremost, I believe that Malaysia and other ASEAN economies truly need to embrace the market pricing of energy. And such market pricing would thus avoid the basically issue of subsidizing energy or subsidizing brown energy relative to green energy. That in itself makes renewable energy relatively expensive to brown energy, and therefore really makes sustainable financing very, very difficult indeed in these countries when there is a much more cheaper or economic solution. It actually renders such green or renewable project financing to be uneconomic. So what we really need to do is to wean off from such subsidies and embrace market mechanism in our energy supply markets. And we need to do this across ASEAN. And then what about the affordability issue? Well, the affordability issue can be addressed by perhaps direct subsidy mechanisms to the less fortunate, but certainly we should not go back to price subsidy mechanisms which are highly distortive. And so I'll also like to address another area, which is the issue of carbon pricing. So it's not just about the price of energy, but we should also need to price carbon appropriately. And if and once we do that, then truly sustainable finance can take off because the underlying projects themselves become truly viable. And in this regard, I like to just give a shout out to my Singaporean counterparts who have very recently, in the last month of April, taken the bold and very brave step of increasing their carbon tax from 5 Sing dollars right up to now 45 Sing dollars, which is a ninefold increase. And I understand that they intend to further increase it to a range between 60 to 80 Sing dollars in the near future as well. So such incentives on carbon pricing would obviously have a disincentive on fossil fuel-based generation and instead truly accelerate energy transition or renewable energy acceleration in those countries that have carbon tax. And I sincerely hope that the rest of us in ASEAN would follow suit. I do believe this is necessary anyway, as the rest of the international markets also adopt such practices. For example, in Europe, they have the CBAM initiative, which would come in force soon, and a lot of the exports from ASEAN would be subjected to such carbon-based adjustment mechanisms. So to conclude, I believe ASEAN must embrace the reality of true energy market pricing, and not just energy market pricing, but also carbon pricing. And once we do, or we take these bold steps to realign our economy with the right incentives, then these projects of sustainability and renewable energy projects will become viable, and sustainable finance itself would be quite, um, would be naturally be the right financing tool for these projects. I believe that we really don't have a choice as the rest of the world advances on these fronts anyway. And while subsidies are a very natural short-term solution, subsidies themselves are clearly not sustainable. So I hope, uh, especially with some members of ASEAN who has already taken this step, such as Singapore, I'm sure the rest of our ASEAN nations, as we take the approach of renewable energy exports and we'll be building out infrastructure to help one another, we would also align our policies accordingly towards market-based pricing and carbon pricing. And in that regard, sustainable finance will flourish. With that, I thank you all and I wish you a very good conference ahead. Thank you very much.